Hello, welcome back to my garden. I'm going to talk about looking after your pots, your greenhouse and your flower beds if you have to go away on holiday, or as we've got here in the UK, there's a bit of a heat wave, because pretty much all the methods that I use apply to both things. Anyway, I'm going to start with the containers. Now the first tip I'd give you, hello Ellie, Ellie's come out to join us. The first tip I'd give you is to find somebody trusted who will come in and do watering for you and a bit of picking if possible. I have a very trusted person who does that, and although she's a great friend, I do actually pay her because she's taking a lot of time. So bear that in mind. If you're asking somebody, unless you can do the same thing for them, then it's, fair. It might be better if you pay somebody and you know they're going to do it reliably. In years gone by, I've had, nothing, but people doing me a favour, but I've sort of asked them to keep picking the sweet peas because if you stop picking them, then they don't flower anymore. And I think people find that quite difficult to pick other people's flowers, so they didn't. So if you've got somebody that's reliable that you can ask. I made out a list, and then I've thought of a couple of things while I was away as well, and she was wonderful. So try and cultivate somebody good like that. And then with containers, I've got a lot in various places in the garden, and most of them are grouped together like this, and that's a good thing. I always think they look nicer in groups, but it's also better because they provide, it's almost like a little microclimate, and they give shade to each other. So several plants together are not going to be as hot as one plant out fully exposed to the sun. And when I put the compost in, I add some, when I put the compost in, I add a good amount. I mix bought compost with some of my homemade compost, and in some cases I mix in starch-based water granules. I think some of those water granules aren't too eco, but the starch-based ones are fine. And what they do is they absorb, and they absorb as you water, but then they release it slowly over a length of time, so that's going to be better for your plants. And then these pots here are a mixture of ornamentals. I've got this lovely grass, Breeza media, and some delphiniums and some cleome and some zinnia, but I've also got tomatoes at the back here. This is a really sunny spot, so as well as grouping them together, adding the starch-based granules, I also put these terracotta spikes in. They're a little bit pricey, but if you look after them, then they're going to last. And what's good about these is that the water, gets to the roots quickly because of you dig it into the soil, but also because it's porous, water escapes, but slowly. So it's going to be watered over a longer length of time. So if you've got to be out or you've got somebody coming in, they can just top it up, and it's going to not just all be gone in an hour or so. If you don't want to invest in these, there's a similar thing you can do with plastic bottles. I'll show you that in a minute. So, I have already filmed myself doing this, only I forgot to switch my other camera on that's doing the close-up. So I had a look to see what else we had in the house, and I found a small bottle of sparkling water. So now I've got myself an elderflower. I find this size is quite good, but you can use a large one. It depends how big your pot is really. And you just want to, you don't even have to do this, but I quite like to take that off. And then you have to be careful. You can usually cut them with scissors, but the first incision is quite difficult. So, oh, actually, this one's doing quite well. I can do it all with this. Sometimes it's easier to do with scissors. You just need to make the initial hole, but always be careful. So that couldn't be much easier, could it? And so you see you've got the same size as the spike. Obviously it's not porous like that, but it's still going to direct the water down at the roots, which is what you want. And you can top that up, and it does, because if it's sitting in compost, unless your compost is completely dry, it does take a little time to drain out, so it's better than just using a watering can at the top. One more thing to say about pots: if you've got a lot together, it's worth considering an automatic watering system. These work usually by a timer run on a battery that goes next to the hose where it fits to the tap, so it will put it on for an hour, say an hour in the morning or an hour in the evening. You always want to do your watering either first thing or last thing, because then there's less evaporation. And then watering systems can be either the sort of leaky pipe type, but for pots you usually get a sensor that goes in the soil and can tell how wet or dry it is, and a little sort of mini tap. I have used them in the past, but not for a long time, just because until recently I never had hose connectors that I could completely trust. I don't know if you find this, but they just go wrong so easily. The plastic gets brittle and breaks off, and if I leave the taps on full, I'd have problems with it bursting off because of the pressure. Now I have got some decent taps, so I might consider doing that again. But that's a very reliable way, especially if you've got really precious things that you don't want to lose. And if you've got as many things still to go in the ground as I have, you want to look after those, and you're going to have to decide whether you're going to put them on trays or not. The advantage is that it's going to retain more of the water. The disadvantage is if there are going to be some heavy downpours, and when you have, even during heatwave weather, you can have that, because you can get, the pressure builds up and you get storms, you can get really heavy rain. If you've not got somebody to come in regularly, then you're going to risk the plants getting waterlogged. I've only just moved these here. These are seedlings, my biennials that I started off before I went away, and I'll talk about those in my next video. But I wouldn't have had them here because this was too sunny a spot. I had them way back in a sheltered place so that they wouldn't get frazzled. And in the greenhouse, I've got a couple of techniques. I expect you know about capillary matting, which holds and retains water really well. These are a little dry actually. I'll do some watering while I'm talking to you. And although I just use using a watering can, you can set up a system where you've got a reservoir of water, and as long as that's higher than the rest of the capillary matting, you can put a strip of the same matting, and the capillary effect will pull down the water onto the matting. So if I was going away for just a few days, so not worth getting somebody else in, I would do that and have done that in the past, and that works really well. And then on this side of the greenhouse, I've got an irrigation system. So I've got a tank, I think that's about 45 litres, and how it works, you keep that topped up, and you've got trays at the bottom. You've got trays at the bottom. I'll put some footage in so you can get a close-up of those. And that again draws on the water. It has a little reservoir in the bottom and a mechanism for taking the water into the pots. And you can see how healthy the tomatoes look. The only drawback I've noticed with this system is it's not completely a drawback. Maybe I should say an observation with this system is that tomatoes actually have the best flavour when they're slightly under stress. So that cycle of drying out a little bit and then watering actually seems to produce better tasting tomatoes. So when they have got a constant supply of water, they can go a little bit bland. So what I tend to do, if it's very, very hot and I don't want to be watering all the time, I use the system. Obviously, if I go away, I use the system. But the rest of the time, I do just tend to use the watering can. And I find that produces a better flavoured tomato. Again, what you can do, rather than have these where the water is drawn up from the bottom, you can, like the watering system I talked about that you can use with the pot, you can get ones that use a dripper system. So if you wanted to water like that, you preferred it, or you had a different setup, but you've still got a big tank of water that will last a good long while. I wanted to have a mention about shading. I have used cool glaze in the past, which is the sort of watery white paint that you paint on and it stays opaque while it's dry, but if it gets rained on then it goes translucent, so you get more light in. and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. It does work quite well. It doesn't look very nice, and because my greenhouse is quite visible from the house, it's kind of important to me how it looks. And so I can't put, I think I mentioned this before, I can't put blinds on because I chose this silly greenhouse with curves on it, so no sort of regular greenhouse blind system would fit. Also, they're incredibly expensive. So I use a shade cloth. So let me show you how I came up with a kind of compromise. So this is the compromise I came up with. The shade cloth is just pegged at the top with these sort of clamp size pegs. When it's very sunny, I just release them. I've got a couple here holding it back. And then that goes all the way across. Now, it's still not the most attractive thing in the world, but I think it looks better than the streaky white paint. And actually this end of the greenhouse isn't so visible from our main living area, so I can put up with that. I like the fact that you've got the flexibility that on a cloudier day you can do this, and you know, you're still getting quite a lot of light in, but it's shaded on the top. It depends, if you're going away and you know it's going to be like a really sunny hot spell, I think I left it down when I went away because I knew it was going to be like that. But if it's more iffy, then I would pin it back, because then you've got some shading, but you've still got quite a lot of light going in. So you kind of have to weigh up the pros and cons for yourself. And then when it comes to your flower beds, you have several. When it comes to your flower beds, one of the most important thing is to mulch it. And it doesn't really matter what you use. If you've got loads of compost and manure, use that. But not all of us, most of us don't have that much. So I've used grass cuttings quite a lot earlier in the year. And that worked really well. It's just, I can still see it. I didn't do it at the front here, but in the rest of the bed, I did it. And when you think it's had very little watering, I tend to do the water sparingly, so I'll water small things, newly planted things and annuals. And where you can see all those canes, I've got tomatoes in there, so they got watered. And I've got a few seedlings, and early in the year when I put in some annuals like the Cerinthian, I've got snapdragons just coming, I'd water those several times. But once they're established and you can mulch, then that's good for both being away and for during a heat wave. Also, keep weeding. You know, it's obviously better to weed before you mulch, but you know, little ones still come up. Also, if you use homemade compost, then you're going to get seedlings coming from that, because unless you're doing hot composting, you're going to get some seeds survive that. So weed and mulch and pick and harvest. You know, obviously if you were here every day, you'd be deadheading. If you can't do that, and if you haven't got anybody else to pick, especially with annuals, what I would do and have done is to chop off all the flowers, which is quite a difficult thing to do. But that means that there's time enough for the plants to recover and start producing more flowers, so that when you come back, you've got them. And that's almost the same for when it's a heat wave as well, because plants that are under stress just want to make seed, so they're going to go over quickly. So it's really important to keep on top of the picking and the deadheading when you do that. Hello, Ellie. It's now the evening, and the light's always really gorgeous at this time, especially the way it shines through the steeper tenuissima. Don't you think, Ellie? What do you think? What do you think? And Ellie, if you're worried about Ellie in the heat, she seems to cope better than we do, actually. Oh, look at her. Ridiculous. And if you're worried about how Ellie copes with a heat wave, she copes pretty well, because golden retrievers have this double layer which keeps them warm in the winter, but actually helps insulate them against the heat. Because we looked at, well, should we trim her? But the advice is that you shouldn't. And we try and walk her early in the morning, and if we have to go out when it's a bit warmer, we pour water on her, which she doesn't like, but she tolerates. And rather than doing it straight from the tap, we tend to do it for a watering can so it isn't too cold. It's sort of tepid, but as it dries off, it cools her down. So I would say that she copes pretty well with the heat, but we do keep an eye on her. So I didn't expect to be giving dog care tips. I'm not an expert. So I hope you found those bits of advice useful. And if you've got any, I'd love to know. And Ellie and I will sign off and we'll see you again soon.